Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. Today, we've got a pretty interesting, I'd say an intriguing mix of articles today.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about everything from like celebrity branding and marketing to the global economy.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And you know, it's interesting because all these things seem disparate, but I have a feeling we're going to find out that they are all interconnected in some way.
Like some invisible thread.
Yeah, exactly.
Waving it all together.
Yeah, and you know what's kind of interesting too is we are potentially going to be looking at some economic headwinds that could be facing even someone like David Beckham, who, by the way, looks incredible at 49.
Yes, he does.
But we'll get to that in a second.
He does.
Yeah. But speaking of economic headwinds, that's kind of what's happening in the global economy right now, right? Like we've got this rising inflation, we've got jittery bond markets.
Right.
But before we get to all that, let's start with David Beckham's latest venture.
Okay.
He's launching a new supplement brand called IM8.
Interesting.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Beckham has always been incredibly strategic about his personal brand.
He has.
From those iconic Adidas soccer boots to that sneaky Stella Artois ad he did on Hot Ones.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
The man knows how to leverage his image.
He really does. And he was great on that show, too.
Yeah.
But this isn't just a random protein powder either. IM8 features a daily supplement powder and a longevity capsule.
Oh, wow.
Like he's kind of aiming for that one-stop shop approach to wellness, especially given his partnership with Prenetics, a genetic testing company.
Yeah, that's a really smart move. Partnering with a genetic testing company allows them to tap into the growing demand for personalized health solutions.
Yeah.
It's not just about a general supplement anymore. It's about precision and tailoring products to individual needs.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And Beckham himself has talked about how IM8 is a blend of personal touch and scientific research. He even calls it a one-stop shop solution for health and wellness. Do you think that kind of messaging resonates with people today?
I think it does, especially with the consumers who are increasingly interested in taking a proactive approach to their health and well-being.
Right.
Plus, having a scientific backing for a product like this can help build trust and credibility in a crowded market.
Okay, so we've got Beckham, who at 49 is launching a supplement brand focused on longevity.
Right.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have these global economic indicators flashing some warning signs.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that a bit, starting with U.S. inflation. Analysts are expecting a surge in the Producer Price Index, PPI, which could then impact the Consumer Price Index, CPI, ultimately influencing what the Federal Reserve does with interest rates.
Exactly. PPI measures what businesses are paying for goods and services.
Sure.
And if those costs go up, they often get passed along to consumers in the form of higher prices, which is reflected in the CPI.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve pays close attention to CPI because their goal is to keep inflation in check.
So if PPI surges and CPI follows suit, that could put pressure on the Fed to raise interest rates, right?
That's a possible scenario, yes. And we're already seeing the bond market react to this possibility. Yields on U.S. 10-year Treasury notes are rising.
Oh, really?
Which can make stocks less appealing to some investors.
Okay, so people are going more towards bonds instead of stocks.
Potentially.
Yeah, okay. And Kenny Polcari, a market analyst, has expressed concern about the Russell and transports indices entering correction territory. To be honest, I'm not really sure what that means.
Right.
Could you break that down for me and, of course, for our listeners?
Sure. A correction in the stock market means that the market has dropped by 10% or more from a recent high.
Okay.
It can be a sign that investors are becoming more cautious or even pessimistic about future growth.
Gotcha.
The Russell 2000 index tracks small-cap companies,
Right.
while the Transports index focuses on companies involved in transportation, like airlines and trucking companies. So when both of these indices enter correction territory,
Right.
it can suggest a broader risk-off mentality in the market.
So it's like a bad sign?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
It's something to watch closely.
So it's like investors are seeing these economic warning signs like rising inflation and the potential for interest rate hikes, and they're starting to pull back a bit.
Precisely. And that shift in sentiment can have ripple effects throughout the economy.
Speaking of ripple effects,
Yeah.
let's look at what's happening across the pond in the UK. Analysts are warning about a potential vicious circle in the bond market there. What's the concern there?
The concern is that rising gilt yields, which are essentially UK government bonds, could put a strain on public finances.
Okay.
Potentially forcing the government to implement tighter fiscal policies, which could then have a negative impact on economic growth.
So it's like a domino effect. But instead of dominoes, we've got rising yields triggering tighter policies, which then slows down the economy.
That's a good way to put it. It's a chain reaction that can be difficult to break once it starts.
And analysts are predicting that this could cause the British pound, GBP, to weaken against the US dollar, USD, with cable, GBP USD, potentially dropping to 1.200 in the near term. That sounds pretty significant.
It is. A weaker pound can make imports more expensive for UK consumers and businesses, further fueling inflation.
So we've got these economic headwinds brewing on both sides of the Atlantic.
Yeah.
How might this impact someone like David Beckham, who has business interests in both the US and the UK?
That's an excellent question, and one we'll definitely want to explore. Remember, he co-owns Inter Miami CF in the US and has various other ventures in both countries.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, a weaker pound could make it more expensive for his UK-based ventures to import goods or services priced in US dollars.
Yeah.
And if those economic anxieties start hitting consumer wallets on either side of the pond, it could impact sales of his new supplement line.
Right, because even if his branding is top-notch and the product is fantastic, if people are cutting back on spending those discretionary items like supplements, might be the first to go.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole scenario so interesting. You have someone like Beckham who seems to defy age launching a product that taps into our desire for longevity and well-being, yet he's doing it at a time when the global economic landscape feels shaky.
Right.
Which could directly impact consumer behavior.
It's a real-life case study in how interconnected everything is. You can't separate celebrity ventures from market forces, even if that celebrity is David Beckham.
Absolutely. And it raises a really important question for any business, celebrity-backed or not. How do you create a product and a brand that can withstand economic uncertainty?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wonder if part of Beckham's strategy might be focusing on the personalized aspect of IM8.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that consumers are becoming more interested in tailored health solutions. Maybe that's a way to differentiate his brand and justify a price premium, even if the economy takes a downturn.
That's a really astute observation. Personalization could be a key differentiator, especially when consumers are becoming more discerning about where they spend their money. It's like that old saying, people don't mind spending money, but they hate feeling like they've wasted it.
Right.
So if a product promises to deliver personalized results, that might make it more appealing, even in a tough economic climate.
It makes me think of those meal kit delivery services that were so popular a few years ago. Some of them struggled when the economy slowed down, but others that offered more customization and dietary restrictions thrived because they were providing a more tailored experience.
That's a perfect analogy. It highlights how businesses can adapt and even succeed during challenging times by focusing on consumer needs and offering something truly unique.
But let's not forget the power of Beckham's personal brand. He's cultivated an image of fitness, style, and success for decades. Do you think that alone can insulate him from economic headwinds?
His brand recognition is undoubtedly a huge asset, and it definitely gives him a leg up in a crowded market. However, I think even someone with Beckham's global reach will need to be strategic and adapt to changing consumer behaviors as economic anxieties rise.
So it's not just about slapping his name on a product and calling it a day. He'll need to genuinely connect with consumers, communicate the value proposition of IM8, and as you mentioned, emphasize that personalized aspect.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see how he and his team navigate this delicate balance between star power and authentic connection. Because at the end of the day, consumers want to feel like they're making smart choices, both for their well-being and their wallets.
And that's a sentiment that transcends any particular product or brand. It speaks to a larger shift in consumer consciousness, where people are more informed, more selective, and more demanding of the brands they support.
Absolutely. It's a trend that I think will continue to reshape the consumer landscape in the years to come.
So we've talked about global economic trends, celebrity branding, and personalized wellness. It's fascinating how these threads intertwine and ultimately influence the choices we make as consumers. But before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the potential impact of a weaker British pound. You mentioned that it could make imports more expensive, but what about the flip side? Could it benefit UK exporters in any way?
That's a great question, and it highlights the complexity of currency fluctuations. A weaker pound can actually make UK exports more competitive on the global market because they become cheaper for buyers using other currencies.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It can hurt consumers and businesses reliant on imports, but it can also create opportunities for exporters.
Precisely. And it demonstrates how economic events can have both positive and negative consequences depending on your perspective and position within the market.
It's a reminder that there's always more to the story than what might initially meet the eye.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so crucial to stay informed, consider multiple perspectives, and be willing to dig deeper beneath the surface.
Speaking of digging deeper, there's one more layer to this David Beckham saga that I think is worth exploring. It's a bit more personal and touches on how past controversies can impact a celebrity's brand, especially when they're promoting a product focused on trust and well-being.
You're referring to the Rebecca Loos incident, of course. It's interesting that you bring that up because it certainly adds another dimension to our conversation about Beckham's brand and its resilience.
Right. For those who might not be familiar, Loos was the Beckham family's nanny during their time in Madrid, and she claimed to have had an affair with David back in 2004. It was a massive scandal at the time and put a lot of strain on his marriage to Victoria.
It was a media frenzy, with Loos giving numerous interviews and Beckham vehemently denying the allegations. The story resurfaced recently when Loos gave another interview reflecting on that tumultuous period. She even shared details about their alleged first date, claiming she hid in the trunk of a car to avoid being seen.
It's a reminder that even global icons like Beckham are human with their own personal struggles and controversies. And it makes you wonder how much those past events might impact his current brand image, especially when he's marketing products centered on personal well-being and trust.
It's a valid question. Consumers are increasingly aware of a brand's values and ethics, and they're more likely to support brands that align with their own moral compass.
So how does someone like Beckham navigate these choppy waters? He's never publicly addressed the Loos allegations, directly choosing instead to focus on his family and philanthropic work.
That strategy seems to have worked for him so far. He's managed to maintain a largely positive public image even after multiple controversies.
Yeah.
But it does raise questions about accountability and the power dynamics at play. Loos has faced intense scrutiny and judgment for her role in the alleged affair, while Beckham's career has continued to thrive.
It highlights the often uneven consequences of celebrity scandals, particularly when gender dynamics are involved. It's a conversation worth having as we continue to grapple with issues of power imbalances in the public sphere.
Absolutely. And it adds a layer of complexity to our analysis of Beckham's brand and its potential resilience in the face of economic uncertainty. Because now it's not just about market forces and consumer behavior, it's also about how effectively he can manage public perception and maintain trust, especially given this resurfacing of a past controversy.
So it's almost like we're seeing a real-time experiment unfold here.
Yeah.
Can Beckham's carefully crafted image and strategic branding overcome these potential economic headwinds and the reemergence of this past controversy?
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch how it all plays out. It's a high-stakes game, and there's a lot riding on his ability to navigate these complex challenges. But it also speaks to a larger point about how we as consumers perceive and interact with brands in today's world.
Yeah, it's not just about the product anymore. It's about the story, the values, the authenticity, and even the personal history of the people behind the brand.
Exactly. We're looking for more than just a transaction. We want to connect with brands that we believe in, brands that resonate with our own values and aspirations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways that our listeners should keep in mind?
I think one of the most important takeaways is that everything is connected. Global economic trends, celebrity branding strategies, personal scandals, and even our own individual choices as consumers. It's all part of a complex and ever-evolving ecosystem.
Right, it's like one of those interconnected network diagrams you see where one tiny tug can cause ripples across the whole system. And it's a good reminder that even seemingly distant events can have a very real impact on our own lives and decisions.
Absolutely. For instance, we've seen how rising inflation in the US and bond market jitters in the UK could potentially affect David Beckham's business ventures. But it also highlights how those same economic forces could be influencing your own financial decisions, even if you're not a global celebrity.
Right. If the price of everyday goods keeps going up, or if there's downturn in the economy that's going to impact everyone's wallet.
And on a more individual level, Beckham's foray into the personalized wellness market speaks to a larger trend that we're seeing play out across many industries, the increasing demand for tailored solutions that cater to individual needs and preferences. This is something you're likely encountering in your own life, whether it's choosing a meal kit delivery service or searching for a specific type of healthcare provider.
It's all about being more informed and making choices that align with our own values and goals. And sometimes that requires digging a bit deeper and looking beyond the surface to understand the full context of a situation.
Precisely. And that's what we hope this deep dive has provided you with, a more nuanced understanding of how seemingly disparate events are connected, how those connections can impact your life, and how you can navigate this complex world with a bit more awareness and clarity.
So as you go about your day, we encourage you to think about these connections, ask questions, and challenge assumptions. Because knowledge isn't just about accumulating facts. It's about understanding the world around us and making informed choices based on that understanding.
And that, my friend, is the ultimate goal of any deep dive.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time with a fresh stack of sources and another thought-provoking conversation.
We're breaking down the money